Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. If you have not already subscribed to my channel, please do subscribe to my channel. And today's topic is SAS Macro Series Part 2. And in this, we are going to talk about macro variables and percent-let statement. There are many ways to create SAS macro variables, and one of them is percent-let statement. And here, I want you to understand few other things about macro variables. Macro variable, the naming convention is very similar to SAS data step or proc SQL variables. And those rules are the variable name or macro variable name should not be greater than 32 characters. And also the variable name should start either with underscore or with a character. And also we can have only underscore, character or number as a part of our macro variable. Once we have looked into what are the characteristics a macro variable name should have, now let us also try to understand here the percent-let statement very quickly. Here I am defining percent-let dsn equal to SAS help.class. Here dsn is our SAS macro variable name, and here SAS help.class is its value. And I want you to also remember the value of the macro variable should not be more than 65534 bytes. This is not a very important thing to remember, but just in case. And also this value is a text. Once we have created our macro variable by running this particular statement, we can reference this macro variable by using ampersand dsn. Whenever we are doing ampersand and the name of the macro variable, this is known as referencing the macro variable. Now here we have proc print data equal to ampersand dsn run. This macro variable value resolves once we run this proc print, and then the proc print itself will work. Now I want you to understand how the code works. When we run proc print data is equal to ampersand dsn semicolon run semicolon, we need to understand that first the macro variable resolves and it becomes SAS help.class, and then proc print works. Here I want to remind you one point which we have discussed in the earlier class. That is, ampersand and percent are macro triggers and they execute first even before any other code is compiled and executed. So always macro variable resolves first and then this piece of code runs next. Now let us look into another aspect, that is percent put statement. Percent put statement is very similar to put statement. Put statement deals with the text and variables of data step, whereas in the case of percent put, it takes care of text and also macro variables. Now, when we say percent-let dsn equal to sashelp.class semicolon, and when we run this code, we are creating a macro variable and we are referencing this macro variable by using a percent put statement. As and when we use put or percent put, we have to remember that the main concept there is to put the values in the log. But percent put deals with macro variables rather than variables. Now, when we run this percent put statement, we are going to see this in the log. That is, we are going to see that this ampersand dsn has resulted in SAS help.class. Now that we have understood percent put, now let us quickly focus on what is the difference between put and percent put statement. Here I am having a data step data underscore null underscore, and I am having a put statement and I have some text. Whereas in the case of percent put, I have another text. If you see here, put statement comes before percent put. When we run this piece of code, or when we run this data step, what you will see is, you will see this percent put executing first even before put. And this is pretty clear from what we have discussed in the last class and just a slide before. That is, percent and ampersand are macro triggers, and they always resolve first than anything else. So here, if you run this code, this is what we see in the log. We see this is for percent put statement. We see this resolving first, and then this put statement value resolving next. So let us try to understand how this whole thing works. When we try to compile this code, what happens is, even before this data step is compiled, this percent put statement runs first, and it gives us this value. Then this data step compiles, and then this put statement gives us the result, as you can see in here. If you see here, the put statement value, this is for put statement, comes after the data step is complete, which means after this code is compiled and executed. And percent put statement is very useful, especially to debug. Now let us look into another aspect of macro variable resolution. Here I have pretty much the same code, but here we are creating a new variable, percent let mac var equal to m. And here I am doing proc print data equal to ampersand dsn semicolon, where sex equal to double quotes ampersand mac var double quotes run. Here it is going to resolve into m, and then we are going to get the proc print where sex equal to m. Here the important point to remember is, here we have double quotes. And macro variable, when kept in the quotes, it only resolves when it is in double quotes, but not when in the single quotes. When we try to resolve the macro variable in the single quotes, it just simply picks up as a variable value but not as a macro variable. So whenever we try to put ampersand in a single quote, it will not look for macro variable. Now let's also try to understand by running the code. Here I have my %2 let statements, and here I have proc print where I say where sex equal to double quotes ampersand mac var double quotes close semicolon. Here another important point to remember is, I have option symbol gen. Optional symbol gen helps us to understand what the macro variable has resolved into. Now once I run this piece of code, it's going to proc print SAS help.class where sex equal to m. And also if you look into the log, it's going to tell us that macro variable mac var has resolved to m, and then it has printed what we want to print. We can also see that from the note, wherein we can see where sex equal to m. That is, our mac var has resolved into m. Now let's try to run the same thing but in single quotes and see what happens. And here we don't see anything in the results here. But let's also have a quick look in the log. In the log, we see that ampersand dsn as resolves to sashhelp.class, but there is nothing related to ampersand macvar, which is in single quotes. What does this mean? This means now this value appears more as a variable value rather than a macro variable. So it is no longer going to look into macro variable and then going to pick the value from there. Here also it says that no observations were selected because there is no data with ampersand macvar in sashhelp.class. So it is very important to put double quotes whenever you want to put a quote and resolve the macro variable. Now I would like to emphasize on another important concept, that is macro variable is a text. I might have repeated this so many times, but this is an important point to understand. Here, if you look into previously what we were doing, we were trying to get %let mac var equal to m. And then what we are trying to do is ampersand macvar, and we are trying to put double quotes around it. But if you want to have the same thing, we really don't have to have double quotes and everything in here. What we can directly do is we can define percent let new macvar equal to m double quotes, and we can do the same proc print. What is happening in here is it finally resolves to where sex equal to double quote m here. So what I want to make you understand is either this way where you create a macro variable and put it in double quotes will work, or directly put a double quotes here and use it in here. Now I also have percent put statement here, so I can put the value into the log. And here I have also written additional text so that my percent put is more cleaner. Now let us try to understand these by running in our SAS Studio also. Here I have my percent let statement, that is percent let new mac var equal to double quotes m. And I have also have my percent put statement where I am saying value of new mac var equal is ampersand new mac var. So when I run this, it is going to put the value of m with the double quotes in log. Run. Now let us run the proc print too. In the proc print, you can see in the log that new macvar resolves to double quotes m. So whenever you want to create a macro variable, think strategically, think in the terms of that it is a text, and first it resolves and it gives the value you want. So you can put the double quotes or whatever it is in your macro variable itself. I want to continue couple of more slides and explain you in more detail that macro variable is text. So one important point when you talk about macro variable as text, that we are indirectly telling that it's neither a character nor a number, it's just a plain text. So there is no concept of null. When we talk about a character variable or a numeric variable, we have a way to represent null or missing value. But in the case of macro variable, text is there or text is not there. For example, here I have percent let hello equal to semicolon. I don't have any text. This is what it does not have a value means. So it is not like a null or an unknown value. So if you want to use this ampersand hello somewhere like this, it's not going to resolve into any text and it is going to proc print without any problems. In here I have proc print data equal to ampersand macvar1, which resolves into SAS help.class, and ampersand hello, it resolves into no text, so it just stays as sasf.cars and this proc print will run fine. Same is the case with proc means here, where I have sasf.class and ampersand hello. Ampersand hello does not have any text, so it stays as sashelp.class itself. This is a very important point to remember. Now let us take it further. I have some examples of percent let statements and also have my percent puts in here. One another important point to remember from percent let statement is whenever you have space in front of text or after the text, it is not stored in your macro variable. And also I have three other macro variables wherein I am creating with some other thing than what we generally think of text. I have quotes here, I have double quotes here, I am having some symbols here. The important point to remember is whatever you have will be stored as such. It's not going to resolve into something else. It is a plain text and it comes out as text when you try to resolve in it. Another important point to remember is the space in front and the back of the text is not stored, especially when you are creating macro variables using %let statement. Now let us try this in our SAS Studio very quickly. Here I have the same thing what I have shown you in the slide, and here I am trying to do the %let statements followed by my %put, and also I have the pipe in here. The advantage of using pipe like this, if there is some space in front of it, it will show up. Now let us quickly run all of this and see what are our results. Now here if you can see, our results are value of A is high. Even though we have space, that space was removed. And here we had a space at the back. For C we had a space in the front and back. All the spaces have been removed. That is true with %let statements. Whenever we create with the %let statements, we cannot store the space before and after the text. And if you see here, the macro variables wherein we have quotes, it resolves as it is, as the text you can see in here, as the text you can see in here. Now let us look into another concept, that is overwriting macro variable values. And we will try to understand this through an example. Here I am defining macro variable %let dsn equal to sashelp.cars, and I am referencing this macro variable in my proc print in here. As my macro variable value is sashelp.cars, the proc print will print sashelp.cars dataset. Now that we have created a macro variable does not mean that the macro variable is there for the whole SAS session. We can always overwrite it. Overwriting the macro variable is again very simple. All we need to do is %let dsn equal to sashelp.class semicolon run. That is, we need to run another %let statement wherein we can change our value, and here we have changed the value to sashelp.class. And now when we proc print, the proc print will print the data set related to sashelp.class, because now our macro variable value is sashelp.class. So overwriting macro variable values is super simple. All you need to run is run again the %let statement followed by proc print or whatever you want to do by referencing that macro variable. Now, we should also look into another important aspect. That is, there are some macro variables which belong to SAS session and which are created by SAS, which we can't overwrite. Those macro variables are known as automatic macro variables, and we cannot override them. To look into what are those automatic macro variables which are created in the beginning of the session, all we need to do is we need to write %put underscore automatic underscore semicolon, and when we run this, we will find the automatic macro variables. There are many automatic macro variables which are created in SAS session, but here I have pasted few of them. If you look in here, sysday is another macro variable which is the value of Friday. I ran this %put underscore automatic underscore on a Friday, so my sysday has a value of Friday. If I try to do something like %let sysday equal to Sunday semicolon, it is going to give me an error, and it will say that attempt to assign a value to read only symbolic variable. What does that mean? Symbolic variable means macro variable. Whenever it says read only means we have only the way to read from that value but not write to that value. Now let us dive into another topic, that is how to add text to the macro variable. I have made a very detailed video on this topic and I will give the link for the same in the description. Now let's get into the topic itself. Here I am defining my macro variable %let c equal to high. This macro variable I can reference as ampersand c or ampersand c dot. Both of them are going to give me the same result of high. Now if we run this code, we are going to see the following result in our log. If you see, the value of C without dot is high, value of C with dot is high. So both of these statements just resolve to high. I mean to say the macro variable resolve here into high. So the dot in the macro variable, what it tells is, it tells that this particular macro variable has ended, and anything after that dot is not part of that macro variable. This is very important and very useful, especially when you add text. Now let us add some text to the macro variable and see what happens. Now here my macro variable I have defined as %let macvar equal to Smith. I can add text in front of the macro variable. In this case, I have done %put, name is ampersand macvar. Here, what happens is, as this ampersand macvar, ampersand is a macro trigger, this ampersand macvar resolves first, and as name E is in front, this becomes name is Smith. So this is pretty straightforward scenario. But what happens if we add text at the back of the variable? That is, if I add ampersand macvar, after that if I want to add John to it, what will happen is, it will think that the macro variable you want to give is ampersand macvar John, and we will get a warning saying that apparent symbolic reference macvar John not resolved. So it is very important to do something wherein we are saying that this macro variable is ended and everything afterwards is text. Now let us see how we can do that. Doing that is super simple. All we need to do is we need to add a dot, and then this resolves to Smith John now. So what is happening in here? Ampersand macvar dot first resolves into Smith, and John is a text and it becomes Smith John. And this is very important to understand. Whenever we want to add text to the back of a macro variable, we always need to add dot, and this dot is the part of the macro variable and it resolves. If we are not going to do this, we will be having the problem that the particular macro variable does not exist. And if we want to have something like Smith.John, we need to add two dots here. That is %put ampersand macvar dot John. So what is happening in here? First ampersand macvar dot resolves into Smith. The next dot is a text. You can see here, and John. And this becomes Smith.John. Now let us look into the last topic, that is direct and indirect macro variable reference. Till now what I have discussed is direct reference. That is where we are using single ampersand. For example, here I am defining my macro variable %let name1 equal to hello, and I am trying to reference this macro variable using a single ampersand. That is %put value is ampersand name1. This is a single ampersand and this resolves into hello. This is a pretty straightforward scenario. Now let us look into an indirect macro variable reference. This is really very helpful, and the reason for using this kind of thing we will discuss in the future classes, but for now let's try to understand what is indirect macro variable reference. For understanding indirect macro variable reference, let us try to use the same example. That is, we want to use %let name1 equal to hello. Here I have another macro variable %let I equal to 1. The goal now is to use name, which is a part of macro variable name here, and ampersand I, and we want to resolve hello, which means a part of the macro variable name here and this macro variable to resolve into this particular value hello here. If I do %put ampersand name ampersand I, what happens is, as we have not defined macro variable name, we are going to get a warning saying that apparent symbolic reference name not resolved. but ampersand I is there, ampersand I resolves to 1. So finally we are not able to resolve back to hello. How we can do this? We can do this with the help of indirect macro variable reference, which is by using multiple ampersand. Again, instead of using single ampersand name ampersand I, if you use double ampersand name ampersand I, this resolves to hello. Now let us try to understand how this works. Macro variable reference starts from left to right. So what happens in here is two ampersands resolve into one ampersand first, and this ampersand I resolves into 1. Now it will again go into another pass wherein this ampersand name 1 resolves into hello. So to sum it up, in the first pass, ampersand name ampersand I became ampersand name 1. In the second pass, ampersand name 1 resolved to hello. Now let us try to understand this more deeply by using symbol gen. Option symbol gen helps us to know how macro variables are resolved. Again, here I am using percent put ampersand I, but I have the option symbol gen. So option symbol gen tells us how the whole thing resolves. Symbol gen says that ampersand resolves to ampersand. Ampersand I is resolved to 1. And now we are left with ampersand name 1, that is macro variable name 1. Macro variable name 1 value is hello. Here the important thing is to understand that if we have used a single ampersand, it would have resolved immediately. Because we have used two ampersand, what has happened is the macro variable has not resolved immediately, but it resolved when we wanted it to resolve. So these two ampersand became one ampersand and this became ampersand name 1, and we were able to get hello. I have covered lot of topics for macro variables, but not all the topics related to macro variables, and some of them we will be discussing in the future classes too. That's all for this topic. If you have liked this topic, please give it a thumbs up, share and subscribe. Thank you.